Welcome to Dark History, where we speak the unspoken.
Chapter 1. Opening the Darkest Secrets. Dive into unspoken history, where we dig up the wildest secrets of empires and share the jaw-dropping stories that history books just cannot handle. Ready for the ride? Tonight, we step into the shadows of ancient Rome, where grandeur masked depravity. Our story centers on Valeria Messalina, empress to Claudius, mother to his heirs, and a woman whose insatiable lust horrified even Rome's decadent elite. Her palace was no seat of virtue. It was a labyrinth of vice, where power and perversion wove a nightmare that chilled the eternal city to its core. Get ready, because this story is definitely not for the faint of heart. Chapter 2. Historical Background. In the year 26 AD, as the Roman Empire groaned under the paranoid reign of Emperor Tiberius, Valeria Messalina was born into the heart of the storm, the Julio-Claudian dynasty. This was a bloodline defined by conspiracy and a relentless thirst for power. As a great-grandniece of the divine Augustus, her veins flowed with the bluest blood in Rome. But in this treacherous world, nobility was a starting point, not a shield. Surrounded by whispers of treason and the ghosts of fallen relatives, Messalina learned early that ruthlessness was not a flaw, but a necessity for survival. Her path to power was secured through a
Like and subscribe.
seemingly unglamorous union. At just 14, she was married to Claudius, the 48-year-old uncle of the reigning emperor Caligula. To the cruel courtiers of the palace, Claudius was a joke, a physically frail scholar with a stammer and a limp, dismissed as a harmless fool. The marriage was a political calculation, binding Messalina's influential family to a man no one believed would ever matter. But in 41 AD, after Caligula's brutal assassination, the Praetorian Guard found Claudius cowering behind a curtain. In a bizarre turn, they proclaimed him emperor. Suddenly, the forgotten fool was the most powerful man in the world, and the teenage Messalina was his empress. Claudius, now in his 50s, was an accomplished historian, more comfortable with scrolls than the scepter. He was intelligent but politically naive, easily swayed by those closest to him. This created a power vacuum at the very center of the empire. And in that vacuum, Messalina didn't just see a stage for her ambitions. She saw an empty throne she could effectively occupy. She quickly understood that controlling the emperor's ear was the same as wielding his authority. His trust was her key, his weaknesses, her instruments of power. The historians of the era, writing with senatorial bias, would paint her as a figure of pure corruption. Tacitus called her insatiable in her lusts. Suetonius branded her a monster of debauchery. The poet Juvenal penned the most infamous tale of the empress disguising herself to work all night in a common brothel. These accounts, written by men from a class that felt its power usurped by an influential woman, must be read with caution. Accusations of sexual excess were a common tool to discredit female authority, yet the smoke suggests a fire. Even contemporary sources like Pliny the Elder confirm a pattern of extreme behavior. The truth is more chilling. Messalina's sexuality was not merely an indulgence, it was a political weapon. She used affairs to build alliances, gather intelligence, and destroy her enemies. A senator who spurned her could be accused of treason. A rival noblewoman could be blackmailed or executed. The imperial palace became her chessboard, and its inhabitants her pawns, in a deadly game where desire and death were inextricably linked. Chapter 3. Palace Brothels and Infamy, a wild dive into scandal and secrets. The Palatine Hill, the heart of Roman power. From here, the Emperor Claudius ruled a vast empire. But within the gilded walls of the imperial palace, a different kind of power was being wielded. His third wife, the Empress Messalina, was young, beautiful, and possessed a ruthless ambition. While the aging Claudius was often portrayed as a scholarly, yet easily manipulated ruler, Messalina was the true terrifying force in the palace, turning its grandeur into a stage for her own drama. The ancient historians, Tacitus and Suetonius, paint a lurid picture. They claim that under the cover of darkness, the empress would disguise herself and slip into the city's grimy brothels. She adopted the alias Lysiska, the wolf girl, and a common slang for a prostitute, and would stand in a vacant cell, welcoming all comers for a single denarius. Pliny the Elder adds a shocking detail: a contest with a veteran prostitute to see who could service more men. Messalina, he writes, won with a score of 25. Are these accounts literal truth or politically motivated slander? To her enemies, these stories were invaluable weapons, transforming her from a political rival into a monstrous figure whose lust threatened the moral fabric of Rome. This alleged behavior was never just about carnal desire. It was a calculated performance of power. By choosing lovers from the lowest rungs of society, slaves, actors, gladiators, she was deliberately subverting the rigid Roman social hierarchy. Each transgression was a message. She was above the law, above tradition. This reputation for depravity became a political tool. She could accuse her rivals of the very acts she was rumored to commit, leading to their exile or execution, seizing their property and consolidating her influence with every scandal she survived. And where was Emperor Claudius amidst this whirlwind of intrigue? Often he was dining with senators, engrossed in historical debates, seemingly oblivious to the chaos unfolding under his own roof. But was he truly unaware, or was it a willful blindness? The imperial court was a nest of vipers, run by powerful freedmen like Narcissus, who managed the empire's bureaucracy. They knew of Messalina's activities, perhaps even feeding the rumors to increase their own standing with the emperor. Her ultimate act of defiance, however, would be her last. Her target was Gaius Silius, a charismatic senator-designate whom historians described as the most attractive man in Rome. While Claudius was away at the port of Ostia, overseeing a critical grain shipment, Messalina made her move. This was not a secret affair. In a move of breathtaking audacity, she forced Silius to divorce his wife and staged a public wedding ceremony with him. They signed a marriage contract and held a lavish feast. It was a direct, treasonous challenge to Claudius' authority, an apparent bid to replace the old emperor with a new one of her own choosing. The news sent shockwaves through the court. It was the freedman Narcissus, fearing for his own life, who rushed to Ostia and finally forced the indecisive Claudius to act. Panic erupted. Silius and his co-conspirators were executed without trial. Messalina, abandoned by her allies, made a desperate plea for her life, but Narcissus ensured she never reached the emperor. She retreated to the gardens of Lucullus, a property she had ruthlessly acquired. There, as soldiers closed in, her courage failed her. At just 23 years old, the empress was executed. In the aftermath, the Senate decreed ordering her name chiseled from monuments and her statues torn down, a final attempt to erase the scandalous empress from history. Chapter 4. Public spectacles and coercion. Messalina's depravity wasn't confined to the palace. It became a public spectacle. While Juvenal's account is likely exaggerated for moral effect, the fact that such a story was believable at all speaks volumes about the reputation she had already forged for shattering imperial decorum. Her nocturnal exploits allegedly led her deep into the Subura, Rome's seedy, sprawling underbelly. In this labyrinth of taverns and brothels, a world away from the marble palace, the empress reportedly took on the pseudonym Lysiska, the she-wolf. The historian Pliny the Elder recounts the infamous tale of her challenging a professional prostitute to a contest of endurance, servicing men through the night until dawn, exhausted but victorious. This wasn't merely lust. It was a bizarre performance of dominance, a public rejection of her status for a grittier form of power. These stories, whether true or embellished, were more than gossip. They were weapons that echoed in the Senate. They knew Messalina had the emperor's complete trust, and her displeasure meant ruin, exile, or death. Her public scandals became a terrifying demonstration of her untouchability. She wasn't just breaking rules, she was proving she was above them. Her practices grew ritualistic, a dark parody of state religion, weaving fertility symbols like the goat into her spectacles, twisting sacred rites into a personal cult of power. When desire wasn't enough, she turned to coercion. The palace became a prison for the unwilling. Slaves, captives, and even children of the elite became her playthings, subjected to humiliations that broke their spirits. Pliny the Elder notes her use of potent aphrodisiacs brewed from exotic herbs and animal parts. These were not just for pleasure, but were tools of control, forcing compliance and pushing victims past their limits. The gilded corridors didn't ring with revelry. They rang with cries not of pleasure, but of coercion and despair. This personal tyranny was mirrored in her political machinations. As Augusta, she bent the state to her will. Lovers with no experience were given powerful commands. Enemies were eliminated with false charges and quiet poison. The historian Cassius Dio alleges she sold public offices and Roman citizenship to the highest bidder, corroding the empire from within. And in the center of this den of vice, her son and heir, Britannicus, grew up, a silent witness to a court defined by his mother's insatiable appetites and cruelty. Chapter 5. Legacy and Fall. Messalina's legacy is a stain on Rome's soul. Her death in 48 AD, ordered by Claudius, didn't cleanse the empire. Nero's mother, Agrippina, would later echo her ruthless ambition. Historians like Tacitus may have exaggerated to smear the Claudians, but graffiti in Pompeii, etched by common Romans, confirms Messalina's infamy was no mere elite slander. She normalized depravity at the empire's heart, fueling tales of Rome's moral decay. Her story is a warning. Power, unchecked, breeds corruption. Sex was her weapon, wielded without conscience, leaving scars that outlived her. In the shadows of history, Messalina remains Rome's most perverted empress, her name synonymous with lust and terror. And with that, the curtain falls on Rome's most scandalous empress. The secrets of her power and her ultimate downfall remind us that history is often more chilling than we can imagine. If you want to unearth more dark truths and stay up to date with the latest dark history facts, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next time.
It's a dark history.